By the time Linda Turner sat down for her follow-up interview, the case was no longer about what had happened. It was about whether the truth would finally be admitted. Interview room 3 was quiet, windowless, and deliberately plain. And this time, Linda was not there to grieve. She was there to explain herself. Linda sat at the table with her shoulders drawn in, hands clasped tightly in her lap. She looked smaller today, not fragile exactly, but diminished, controlled. Hooper entered with a soft knock carrying only a folder. No theatrics. "Linda," he said gently, taking the seat opposite her. "Thank you for coming back in. I know this is still very raw." Her eyes welled almost instantly. A tear slipped down her cheek. Hooper pushed the box of tissues towards her. "Take your time," he said softly. "We're not here to make anything harder." Linda dabbed her eyes, breathing shakily. I can't believe any of this is happening." Hooper nodded sympathetically, letting the silence settle before he continued. "Before we go any further," he said gently, "I want to remind you that this is a voluntary interview. You're free to leave at any time, and you're entitled to have a lawyer present if you want one." Linda shook her head quickly, almost offended by the idea. "No, I don't need a lawyer. I've got nothing to hide." Hooper offered a small, reassuring smile. "All right. That's absolutely fine. I just needed to make sure you knew your options." She relaxed again, just a fraction, and Hooper let her. "Let's go over the walk again," he said softly. "You and Kevin went past the main lookout?" "Yes," she whispered. "He wanted to see the view from further along." "And you were behind him?" "Just a few steps." "And the fall?" Linda steadied herself. "It all happened so quickly," she said. "He stepped to the edge to take a photo, and then the ground gave way." Hooper nodded sympathetically. "Do you mind if I take a quick look at your phone? Just to double-check the GPS data and call logs. Helps us map the timeline properly." She hesitated, a flicker, then handed Hooper the phone. "Of course." "Thank you," Hooper said, standing. "I'll have forensics take a quick look." He stepped outside and handed it to the forensic officer waiting in the hall. "Full extraction, GPS, browser history, recent activity." The officer nodded and disappeared down the corridor. Hooper returned to the room. "They'll only be a little while," he said. For several minutes, he kept things soft, gentle questions, reassurance, letting her believe he was off the mark, letting her settle. Then he shifted. "Linda, Kevin's smartwatch stopped recording at 11:26 a.m. That lines up with the fall." She nodded, eyes down. "And the 911 call came in at 12:04 p.m. A long pause. "I told you, I panicked," she whispered. "I didn't know what to do." Hooper's tone stayed calm but firmer now. "I understand panic, but 38 minutes is a long time to be unsure." He continued, almost apologetically. "The coroner's report shows Kevin's injuries are consistent with a clean drop. No sliding, no scrambling, no defensive wounds, no soil under his nails." Linda's breath hitched. I told you it happened so fast." "And your boots," Hooper said, "were clean. No dirt, no grit, no sign you tried to climb down." "I did try," she snapped. "I told you." "And the soil at the scene," Hooper said, "was undisturbed. No displaced stones, no scuff marks." Before she could respond, there was a knock. The forensic officer stepped in and handed Hooper a printed sheet. Hooper placed it on the table and rotated it toward her. "Linda, earlier you told me you'd never been to that trail before." "That's right," she said quickly. "Kevin picked it." Hooper tapped the printout. "Your search history from the past week shows multiple queries for the exact area, including the cliff path. And the coordinates you gave the 911 operator were very precise." Linda froze. Hooper leaned in slightly. "Help me understand," he said softly. "Because right now, the evidence doesn't match the story." Her eyes filled again. But this time, the tears weren't grief. They were calculating. I wasn't completely honest, she whispered. Hooper clicked his pen once. Then let's start again. Linda stared at the printout on the table, her breathing shallow, her fingers tightening around the tissue she had been twisting for the past hour. Then something shifted. It was like watching a light switch flip. Subtle at first. Her shoulders straightened. Her eyes stopped darting and fixed on Hooper with a steady, unblinking calm. The trembling lips stilled. The fragile widow evaporated. The woman sitting across from him was no longer the grieving wife. She was the cold, calculating presence Hooper had suspected from the start. "Yes," she said, her voice suddenly flat. "I pushed him." And for a split second, it looked like she was smiling. Hooper didn't move. He let the words settle in the stale air of interview room 3. Linda leaned back in her chair, expression empty. "I have nothing more to say." Hooper nodded once, slowly. The transformation was complete, and she wasn't trying to hide it anymore. He stood. "Linda Turner," he said evenly, "I'm going to need you to stand up." She didn't resist. She rose calmly, almost mechanically, her hands at her sides. Hooper stepped behind her and removed his handcuffs. "I am arresting you for the murder of your husband, Kevin Turner." The cuffs closed around her wrists with a firm, practiced motion. "You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to an attorney. If you cannot afford one, an attorney will be appointed for you." He paused. "Do you understand these rights as I've explained them?" Linda stared straight ahead. Her face was a blank slate. Hooper opened the door and signaled down the corridor for transport officers. Only then did he step aside, guiding her out of the interview room. The interview was over. The case was no longer a theory. It was a charge. 8 months later, the courtroom felt cold in a way that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. The trial had been swift. Linda Turner had entered a guilty plea without hesitation, offering no explanation, no apology, no emotion, just a flat admission of guilt. Now she stood before the bench, expression blank. Diane and Emily Turner sat in the front row of the gallery. Diane's hands trembled in her lap. Emily's jaw was clenched so tightly it looked painful. Judge Ramirez adjusted his glasses, looking down at Linda with a mixture of disbelief and controlled fury. "Mrs. Turner," he began, "this court has reviewed your plea, your criminal history, and the facts surrounding the murder of your husband, Kevin Turner." Linda didn't blink. "You were given a second chance in life. After serving time for a prior felony, you had the opportunity to rebuild. Instead, you chose to take another life." He leaned forward. "You planned this. You researched the location. You waited for an opportunity. And you pushed your husband to his death. You have shown no remorse, not once. Therefore, you are sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole." The words hit the room like a physical blow. Diane exhaled shakily. Emily closed her eyes, tears slipping free, relief mixed with grief. Linda didn't react. She simply bowed her head as the U.S. Marshals cuffed her and led her away. Justice had been done, and Linda Turner would never walk free again. The courthouse steps were crowded with reporters, but Diane and Emily slipped away through a side exit. Outside, the air felt different. "It's over," Emily whispered. Diane nodded. "She can't hurt anyone else now." Hooper approached quietly. "Your son deserved the truth," he said, "and you deserved answers." They stood together for a moment as the city moved on around them. "Kevin can rest now," Diane said. "He can," Hooper replied. The case file was closed. Justice had been served. As for Linda, this story ends where it began, behind bars. Kevin loved honestly. Linda loved precisely. The truth chose sides.